The unspoken thing, manifesting the felt but unsaid.
You ever do that thing where you set a totally fair, totally reasonable boundary, and then you're just hit with this wave of guilt? It's that weird internal battle, right? One part of you is like, yes, I did it. And the other part is just screaming, oh no, was that a huge mistake? Well, let's get into why that happens. I mean, really think about it. You have to turn down a project at work because you're swamped, or you tell a friend you just need a night in, or maybe you say no to a family thing. The word no leaves your mouth and boom, instant guilt. Why does doing something healthy for ourselves so often feel like we did something wrong? First off, if that feeling is familiar, you are so not alone. This quote from a Reddit user just nails it, doesn't it? It's the perfect description of that emotional tug of war. You're proud, but you also feel like you've somehow let everyone down. Just knowing that this is a shared feeling is a huge first step. Okay, so let's start with a really important reframe. What if that guilt isn't a sign that you're a bad person? What if it's just an emotional alarm bell going off because you're trying something new? It's your brain's smoke detector, but there's no fire. You've just stepped off a very old, very familiar path. So to understand that alarm bell, we have to go back and look at the wiring. This feeling is not random at all. It actually has super deep psychological roots that go all the way back to our earliest experiences. Let's dig into that. So take a look at this. This programming starts way earlier than you'd think. As literal babies, our survival depends on our caregivers. So our brains learn connection equals safety. Then in childhood, that idea evolves. A lot of us learned pretty quickly that a calm, peaceful home was a safe home. So we might have started trying to manage everyone's emotions to keep that peace. You fast forward to today, and that same software is still running in the background, making us feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. And this metaphor, the wheels would fall off the bus, just gets to the heart of it. For a kid, a parent being upset can feel like the entire world is ending. So we learn to be little emotional chameleons, right? We do whatever it takes to keep things smooth. Saying no or disagreeing feels like you're rocking the whole bus, a risk you just can't take. And that deep-seated feeling, it doesn't just vanish when you turn 18. And of course, how we were raised plays a huge role. Different parenting styles totally shape how we learn to see boundaries. A super strict authoritarian style can make you feel like your own needs are just not valid. But a more balanced authoritative style, one with clear rules but also lots of support, that tends to build the kind of self-esteem you need to set your own limits with confidence. So all that early conditioning, it doesn't just stay in the past. It actually builds what you could call a people pleaser's toolkit, a whole set of behaviors we learn to use to keep everyone happy and avoid any kind of conflict. And it's so important to see these not as character flaws, but as really clever survival strategies that we learned for a reason. Now, a key tool in this kit is something called fawning. And this is a big one. It's not just being nice. It's an actual nervous system response, right up there with fight, flight, and freeze. When you fawn, your brain's only goal is to make the other person happy, because on some deep primal level, it believes their happiness is what will keep you safe. It's why you might find yourself over-apologizing for everything or just saying what you think someone wants to hear. Another pattern that pops up is called emotional symbiosis. This is basically where the line between your emotions and someone else's just gets completely blurry. You feel responsible for their feelings and they're responsible for yours. When you're in that kind of dynamic, setting a boundary can feel like you're severing a lifeline, a direct threat to the whole relationship. And then, sometimes there are external forces that really prey on these tendencies. There's a dynamic called emotional blackmail, or FOG for short, and it literally weaponizes fear, obligation, and guilt. Someone using this will make you feel afraid to cross them, obligated to do what they want, and then flooded with guilt if you even think about resisting. It's a manipulative pattern that's tailor-made to exploit that guilt button. This all brings us to a really crucial question. Are you trying to be nice, or are you trying to be kind? Because they are not the same thing. Being nice is often just about avoiding discomfort, for you and for them. It's about keeping the peace, even if it means sacrificing your own needs. But being truly kind is about doing what's healthy in the long run, even if it's hard right now. And setting a boundary, it might not always feel nice, but it's an act of kindness to everyone involved. Okay, so we've looked at the deep roots and the behaviors we learn. But what about the enforcer? There's one more major player in this whole game, and it's happening right between our own ears. It's our inner critic, that little voice that just loves to fuel the guilt. So cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, gives us a really powerful way to look at this. The big takeaway is that the guilt doesn't usually come from the action itself, from setting the boundary. It comes from the story we tell ourselves about it. We spin these narratives in our heads that we're selfish, that we're a bad person, that everyone's going to reject us. And those stories, those distorted thoughts, are the real source of the pain. So let's look at some of the greatest hits from our inner critic. First, you've got all or nothing thinking. This is when you say no one time and your brain immediately jumps to, I am a completely useless, unhelpful person. Then there's catastrophizing, where declining one invite means they're going to hate me and will never speak again. But this third one, emotional reasoning, is a big one. It's the belief that I feel guilty, therefore I am guilty. But we have to remember, feelings are not facts. And finally, you have all those should statements, these rigid little rules we have in our heads that make any deviation feel like a huge moral failure. So if our own thoughts are what's trapping us, that's actually good news. It means our thoughts can also be what sets us free. Let's look at a super practical tool you can use to challenge that automatic self-blame and get a more realistic view of what's actually your responsibility. It's called the responsibility pie. It sounds a little silly, but it is incredibly effective. You just draw a circle for a situation that made you feel guilty, and then you start slicing it up. You ask yourself, okay, what part was my choice? What part was their planning or lack of planning? What other outside factors were involved? Then you assign a percentage to each slice. So let's see how this works. Say you felt 100% guilty because you couldn't babysit at the last minute. When you actually make the pie, you might realize, wait a second, my part, the fact that I said no, is maybe only 20% of this whole pie. Her asking at the very last minute, well, that's maybe 40%. And then other factors, things totally out of your control, that's another 40%. All of a sudden, feeling 100% of the guilt seems pretty unrealistic, doesn't it? And this quote just sums up the whole point of that exercise perfectly. Your job is to communicate your boundary clearly and with respect. That's it. That's where your responsibility ends. It is not, and has never been, your job to manage another adult's feelings about your boundary. Their reaction is their responsibility. So as we wrap up, I want to offer a new metaphor. We tend to think of boundaries as these big, imposing walls we build to keep people out. But what if they aren't walls at all? What if they're actually bridges? Bridges that you build to create healthier, more honest relationships based on what you both actually need. And that feeling of guilt, the one we started this whole explainer with, maybe we can stop seeing it as the enemy. Maybe it's actually a compass. It's a signpost that points directly to where you are growing. It's the feeling of your brain actively rewiring itself, moving away from old survival instincts and towards something more authentic. It's the discomfort that always comes right before you get stronger. So I'll leave you with this final question. The next time you set a boundary and you feel that familiar pang of guilt, instead of letting it take over, just get a little curious and ask yourself, if this feeling just means I'm breaking an old rule that doesn't serve me anymore, what new, healthier rule am I choosing to live by instead?